I've got a Vox AC15 Custom Classic that came in. The owner says there is a hum. It's worse at first, then it gets less if you plug in to the input jack, but it's still there. The EL84s have a little bit of heat discoloration. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad. Let's see what's going on here. First thing I see is that this IEC jack is loose. This screw is very loose. This screw is missing. The nut was rattling around inside and fell off. That won't cause that hum, but that's not a good thing. But I've got lots of hardware. I can reattach that. I'll do that afterwards though. Let's see what else is going on with this thing. I took the stupid tube cage off the EL84s. It does nothing necessary that you need. It doesn't really protect the tubes from anything because of how they are in a combo. It just makes it impossible to change the tubes on a gig. I think there's some EU regulation to make sure people cannot possibly burn their dainty little fingers. So you get weird heat shields and tube cages these days. And put it this way, if he doesn't have it and someone burns their fingers, they won't do it twice. Some stoves in this world are just hot. All right, I'm gonna leave it like this. I'm gonna readjust the camera so we can see what's going on. I decided to leave the camera like this after all, or rather the chassis like this, just so that there's no pressure on the speaker jack. Let's turn this thing on. Power switch is a little bit wonky too. That's not a good sound. That sounds like a fuse. No. There's just a plonk sound when that power transformer is turned on. That may just be loose hardware. Well, let's take it out of standby in just a minute and we'll see what's going on. This amp actually does need standby because the filter capacitors in some of the sections are about as low voltage as they could get away with. And until those output tubes draw current, the voltage can actually exceed the ratings of those caps. So this is one of the few Vox AC whatevers where you should use a standby. Yep, there is a hum. Let's see if it goes low, it gets lessened if we plug in. No. No, it's constant. All right, the easiest thing to check is different output tubes. So let's get a different pair of output tubes in there real quick. Okay, we've got a new matched pair of Mullard EL84s in. Take it out of standby. Still have a hum. All right, the reason I wanted to check those output tubes before I did anything else was because if the output tubes are not drawing the same current either per tube or per side, if you have 4, then you don't have common mode cancellation and you can have hum. Let's see what happens if I turn the master all the way down. All right, so that's in the preamp. Let's see if it's affected by the tone stack. A little bit, not a ton. So, next thing to check is preamp tubes. Don't start soldering until you're sure the preamp tubes are good. I mean, you can if you want. I don't recommend it. Some groove tubes, which are usually JJ. Sometimes there's some other brand. And now that hum seems to be gone. Those output tubes are really loose in the sockets, though. means those output sockets need to be retensioned. But that bad buzz we had is gone. All I did was remove these tube shields. That's odd. It's possible there's some weird capacitance thing. That would be a symptom of a bad tube, typically. It doesn't want to go back on. It's because I'm doing this on camera. Trying to tell the world I'm an amp expert, and then I do stuff like this on camera and little things go wrong. You got to have a sense of humor about such things. So the noise floor is not quite where I'd like it. But that bad buzz is gone and I haven't changed anything. Huh. Output tube's a little bit loose in the sockets, but that's it. Let me check the bias on this thing. Got 121 volts coming out of the wall right now, but at the moment that the buzz was real bad, it was 125 volts. So let me measure the voltage across the cathode resistor here, which I've already measured the resistance. I'll turn the master down so I don't have any signal going to the output. I get to true idle. 11.34. And then the plate to cathode voltage was a little bit tricky to measure on this model because it has so many things in the way. This jack here. Here's pin 7 and the cathode. 281.1. That says that is biased at 8.7 watts, which is certainly on the cold side for one of these. Let me confirm that one more time. That seems like too low a plate reading. No, 281 and 11.34. B plus seems low in this amp compared to others. It's usually about 10 to 20 volts higher than that. Well, the idle is not too hot. I notice that this resistor does not match the others, so I suspect someone changed that. But since that tells me that someone has been on the other side of that board, and no offense, that someone was not me, there could be all matters of things wrong beneath the board. So the next thing to do is to poke and prod things, see if any of that noise mysteriously comes back. I do not like mystery noises that come and go for no discernible reason. Let's see how the damn thing's sounding. There it goes. So the owner is right. Ha ha ha. You saw the sequence of things that was happening there. At first, that noise was present regardless of whether it had anything plugged into it or not. But then the noise mysteriously vanished and it came back. So let me show you what I think is going on. I've got the amp powered on, but in standby. This should be safe for me to do, though I still don't recommend that anyone do this kind of thing just from watching some YouTube videos. All right, this is the input jack on this. And this input jack has got this sleeve here, which should be pressed against a little bit of exposed metal on the chassis. And this sleeve is not at, this chassis connection is not the ground point. They've got some capacitors and resistors, and sometimes some what do you call them? Can't remember the word for it. Ferrite beads separating chassis ground from signal ground. It's supposed to reject noise at the input. But when this gets dirty, I can see some funk on that, or when the chassis connection gets dirty, or it's just not tight, you can have that issue. The other issue is you can just have a noisy jack. So let me power this off. And we're going to clean all those surfaces. A little deoxit on the inside where that metal makes contact. You get some deoxit here on this ring, which is supposed to contact the chassis. I'll get that really clean. And then I'm going to put this underneath here. And put the jack in place, plug in place, rather. We're going to hit those contacts with some deoxit. Just do this quite a few times. All right, let's put this back in place now and get that really tight. Trouble is you can only get it so tight because there's a plastic nut. If you tighten it too much, the nut will break or the threaded plastic bushings will break. This is not my favorite jack design, and on amps with these that come in for me to do more work on, mods and stuff, I replace them with a chrome nose Neutrik or Cliff jack because it's more rugged and you can get it a lot tighter. For an amp that just comes in for repair, what's the best way to put it? I will make the option available to the owner. Will not push it, but you know, you don't want surprise bills. You don't want surprises on the bills that the owner didn't understand or pre-approve. If someone sends me an amp for mods, they know who I am and they have certain expectations. If a guy just drops his amp off at the local guitar store, as in this case, he doesn't know who I am. And I don't need to go to great lengths automatically. All right, see if that noise is still there. All right, let's put his tubes back in place and check how they're biasing and check what the noise floor is like with his old hot Mesa branded EL84s, which are soft X. You know, there's nothing usually really wrong with them unless they've been overheated in their life. So we shall see. I know this is not the most exciting repair you've seen on this channel, but I usually only put up about 1/10 of the work I actually do. And there are a lot of little repairs like this that aren't very sexy. People just don't get to see them, etc. Hear that hum that's fading? That's normal in a cathode bias amp. What happens is the two output tubes warm up at different rates. So while they're not drawing the same amount of current, there's no hum rejection. And then they reach their operating level where they pretty much kind of stay. And hopefully they're drawing about the same amount of current, at which point they get quiet. So let's see the voltages again. 10.78 across that cathode now. The wall voltage has dropped to 120. 283.5. Still at 8.7 watts. Now, what has happened here, the reason this is so much cooler, someone changed out that cathode resistor. Would have been 120 ohms originally, and they've changed it to a 180. And what that means is someone has read a data sheet but doesn't understand it. They saw that a EL84 is a 12-watt tube, and they were scared to bias it at 100% or over, so they biased it about 75%, whatever the math works out to be there, 8.7 instead of 12. The reality is that in cathode bias, you don't want to be any cooler than 90% if it's a tube that draws a lot of current, like an EL34. And EL84s, typically you want it 100% to a little bit over. Most Voxes I set to bias between 12 and 14 watts. And that's as precise as I can be because I'm limited by the standard resistor values that there are. So anywhere in that range is good. I think this amp is healthy. I need to make sure that these tubes aren't microphonic. Oh, it is. It's all right. A new pair of JJs is only about 40 bucks. That's not about 25 bucks. Sorry about that. 25 bucks or so for a new pair of JJs. And it's just because the old one has got microphonic. And if it's microphonic when I tap it like this, and it's going to live its life 4 inches away from the speaker, that needs to be changed. So the majority of the hum in this amp was just dirty contacts on this input jack. This model has that fairly complicated RFI filter, which relies on it being tight and being clean. It was neither of those things. We've got a microphonic EL84. Someone has misbiased the amp, but I'm not going to pull the whole thing to change that, because this model in stock form with the Wharfdale speaker has enough other handicaps that this is not the thing preventing this from sounding awesome. This will prolong tube life. People will be happy with that. I just wish people would not automatically cool off the bias in Voxes without knowing what they're doing. And that's a depressing number of people I see on YouTube. All right, this amp is going to get 2 mods. The reliability mods won't change the sound a ton. Number one, we're going to replace this plastic nut input jack with a chrome nose like you'd find on a Marshall or some of the higher end new Voxes. It's just much more reliable. This problem was much less likely to recur. It's a $3 jack. It's easy to do. And the other thing is R23 here. You can see I've got a 68K resistor piggybacked across it. R23 in the stock amp is a 220K. And in this circuit, which has top boost, it takes the place of the cut control pot. Most AC30s and AC15s with a cut control have a 250K pot. Having a fixed 250K or 220K resistor is like having that pot on 10 all the time, the absolute brightest setting possible. Putting the 68K across it takes it down to about 50K, from 220K to about 50K, and it still has plenty of highs, but it's more like running it about noon to 1 o'clock on a standard AC30. So this AC15cc has a well-deserved reputation for being bright, and that's a big part of it. So if I were pulling this board, I would replace that resistor R23. But to save the owner some money on a relatively minor thing, I just piggybacked it. It's going to be totally secure. No issue there.